You are listening to the Speech Space Podcast, a podcast full of tips and resources for SLPs. I'm your host, Jessica Cassidy, and this is episode 17. Hey everyone, I am here today to talk about conducting a preference assessment. I'm going to talk about why we do preference assessments and the different types of preference assessments. But first, I wanted to start off by talking about something that I'm really excited about, and that is the digital SLP membership site that just launched. It's a great way to get a steal of a deal on no prints and printables, in addition to full access to a growing library of freebies. And the way it works is that you get 5 credits each month, which you can spend on whichever products suit your caseload. And that's generally going to be about anywhere from 3 to 5 items, which is valued at about $25 worth of materials. Your credits roll over each month. So if you don't have a need for them one month, then you can use them another time. And it's kind of like going on a mini SLP shopping spree each month. So it's really fun. And in addition to that, in early 2018, educational resources are going to be added, which you can use toward your certification maintenance hours. So I'm really excited about this. And if you sign up right now, you can save almost 50% of the regular price and lock in your membership at just $8.99 a month. So new materials are being added all the time, and the site is going to continue to grow, which will result in the price going up. So you want to act now to get the best savings. You can sign up by going to thespeechspace.com/digital SLP. So I'm really excited about it. I hope you guys are too. Please reach out to me if you have any questions at all. I'm here to help. All right, let's switch gears and go back to talking about our preference assessments. So we're going to talk about preference assessments, why we do them, and the different types. Just to tell you a little bit about why I chose to talk about this on this episode. A few episodes ago, I had my friend Rose Griffin from ABA Speech on, and we talked about systematic language instruction. That was in episode 13, and I will link to that in the show notes for today, so you can go back and listen to that episode if you like. But I got some questions about preference assessments after that episode, so I wanted to do a follow-up episode and talk about them a bit. So why do we do preference assessments? You know, a lot of the students that we see, they're not able to indicate their wants, their needs, their preferences, and preference assessments are a way to identify a person's favorite things. So the information that we get from these assessments is helpful. We can learn about what makes a person kind of tick and use those preferred items as reinforcers in our therapy sessions. So how do we do preference assessments? That's kind of the question that I got. And there's actually a lot of different ways that we can do them. Some are very structured, others are informal. The 3 most common ways to conduct a preference assessment are through 1, interviewing parents or caregivers, 2, through directly observing the student, and 3, through a systematic assessment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the systematic assessments because that would make this episode go on for quite a while. But what I am going to do is I'm going to make a handout for those of you that are interested, and I'm going to summarize the different types of systematic assessments that you would use whenever you're doing a preference assessment. So the first type of assessment that I'm going to talk about is the parent-caregiver interview. Now, this can be formal or informal. An example of something that's formal would be something like the reinforcement assessment for individuals with severe disabilities, and I will link to that in the show notes. An example of something informal would be calling a parent or a caregiver on the phone, sending an email, or sending home fill-in-the-blank assessment that you created in your own speech room. The second type of assessment that I'm going to talk about is done by directly observing the student in their natural environment, like their classroom. So the student would have free access to items about the room, and you're not going to move or take away any of those items. You're just going to observe the student, and you want to record the amount of time spent with each item, and also any behaviors that you pick up on, like smiling or laughing, things like that. And you're going to do this observation over the span of a few days and then determine the favorite items based on those that the students spent the most time with. Now, the last type of assessment is a systematic assessment. Now, there's a lot of different types of systematic assessments. So I'm going to briefly touch on those and why you might want to do them. And then, like I said, I'm going to have that handout for you where you can go and you can actually download and get a little bit more information about each type of assessment. So a single stimulus assessment is going to be good for those children that are unable to choose highly preferred items over low preferred items, or maybe they demonstrate a side bias. That's going to be the type that you're going to use for them, a single stimulus assessment. Now, there's also a paired choice assessment. That is going to be used for those who can select highly preferred items over low preferred items, but they're unable to scan more than 2 items on a surface. So you would want to use a paired choice assessment for them. Now, a multiple stimulus preference assessment is going to be where you present all the items at the same time, and the students are going to select one from all of the items presented during each trial. Duration-based preference assessments, you're going to do those where you're going to present items and record the amount of time spent engaging with each item. And for that one, you can actually present all the items at once, or you can do it individually as well. And then lastly, the competing stimulus preference assessment is going to be one where you're going to measure both the stimulus engagement and problem behavior during the assessment. So, what are some things we should keep in mind when we're doing these preference assessments? For the purpose of the assessment, you want to choose things that can be easily presented or withdrawn. And you also want to make sure that you present leisure activities or toys separately from food items to get the most accurate results. You also want to remember that preferences are dynamic, and if your students' preferences change, then the effectiveness of the items that you're using in therapy are also going to change. So if your student stops being motivated by an item, then that's a good cue to you that it's time to go back and reassess. So these preference assessments, they're not just a one and done. They're something that you're going to want to revisit over time. So that is it for me for today. Thank you so much for joining in. And as always, please let me know if you have any questions for me. I can be reached at jessica@thespeechspace.com. Don't forget to check the show notes for the handout from today's episode. And if you'd like to take advantage of the 50% savings that I mentioned earlier about the digital SLP membership, you can do so by going to thespeechspace.com/digital SLP. All right, guys, have a great week, and we'll talk again really soon.